I'm often asked what my favorite element of the car is, and that's like asking me, which one of my children is my favorite. There's just so many cool things about this car that I love that, we put a lot of thought into. I think my favorite part of the car would be how it all came together and how it feels when I get behind the wheel and press the throttle. My name's Rod Emory. I drive a Porsche 356 RSR with twin turbos. So as a young child, growing up in a family of custom car builders and Porsche fanatics, my mom and dad took me to the hospital when I was still in my mom's womb and brought me home in a 911 short wheelbase car with fat fenders and ducktail, and so I guess I was just kind of destined to be driving and enjoying Porsches for the rest of my life. So when I was 14 years old, my father helped me find an old barn find, rusted out project car. It was a 1953 Porsche 356, and I think we paid $2,000 for it at the time. And we wheeled it into the back of my dad's shop, and I started taking it apart, just imagining, what it could be like if I put the hard work in and built it into something. And 2 years later, the car was restored. It was built into, what is today known as my first Outlaw 356, and it's where the driving really all started for me. I got my driver's license. I was driving the car on the street, but I was also racing it at local tracks around California, and just enjoying the love of a 356 Porsche. And here we are 30 years later, and I've made my life's work around that particular car, and have built nearly 170 Porsche 356s to date, and don't see any end in sight. Plan to do this for another 30 or 40 years. So the Momo 356 RSR is a pretty unique car to drive because, as you walk up to the car, you see the silhouette that kind of resembles a 356, but its extremities are a little bit extreme. And then when you put your hand on the door handle and open that door, there's something that's very familiar about it. Definitely has that feel and soul of the 356 still, but you can tell there's more to it. And then as soon as you start it up, just that sound and that whistle and that slight vibration that comes from the turbochargers, and kind of the whole experience is just kind of surreal. As soon as you put your feet on the pedals and grab the shifter that it's a completely different driving experience. And it's just something that you have to experience to totally understand. But I've always had a desire to kind of push the envelope and develop a car that had some true motorsports inspiration, and a car that if Porsche would have continued building and evolving the 356 from a competition standpoint, what type of things might have they infused into that chassis? I had a great conversation with a good friend of mine, Enrique, that owns Momo, the wheel company. And Enrique came to me and he said, Rod, he goes, if you could build a car that was inspired by some type of element or component that my company, Momo, had back in its heritage, and kind of bring that into a Porsche 356, what would that be? And I said, well, my favorite wheel of all time that Momo had was the 5-spoke wheel that was used in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s on the 935 and the 956, 962 era. Conversation went back and forth, and he said, well, can you build a car that uses that wheel as kind of the inspiration? So if we're going to build a 356 and we're going to have this cool big center lock wheel, we can't just have a car that has the normal 356 60 horsepower engine and drum brakes. And so the idea just kind of started to unfold, and went back and forth to come up with some ideas and concepts. And and then brought that to Enrique and said, hey, let's, you know, what do you think of this? And he says, let's build it. So that's how we started the journey. It was really designed around this Momo wheel, and then it just expanded from there. So on the Momo 356 RSR, I really wanted to keep that kind of foundation of a 356, just like Porsche did on the 934 and 935, but you know, make sure that the removable bodywork was functional and had a little bit more of an aggressive kind of racy look, but still be a little bit unfinished, you know. I didn't want this car to be perfect gap, sitting out, you know, on the lawn, ultra shiny type of car. Like, I wanted it to be kind of raw race car, fun on the outside, so that the real focus and emphasis was on what's underneath. Utilizing a G50 5-speed transmission, and then getting together with Jeff Gamroth at Rothsport and Chris at TurboCraft, we built this 4-cylinder 911 engine that produces nearly 400 horsepower. It's twin turbo, uses Rothsport fuel injection with Motec, 2 Garrett 28R turbos, big intercoolers, and just kind of one piece at a time, we built, you know, the entire chassis, running gear, and suspension. You know, it's kind of like a little cup car when you drive it. But I really wanted the car to have that factory, early Porsche kind of feel. So really the idea with the car was, if Porsche would have taken the 356 and continued to develop the car for motorsport, you know, what type of stuff might have they, you know, carried forward on the 356, and gave us a, you know, a cool little 356 with 400 horsepower, weighs 1,950 pounds, you know, big tires, and so lots of grip, and just, you know, so much fun to drive. You know, every car that I lay my hands on has a special place in my heart, because I put so much time and energy and thought into them, both when I'm awake and I think even when I'm sleeping. But you know, a car like this, where I've really kind of, you know, pushed the limits on so many areas of the car, and really just did it without worrying about what other people would think. But at the end of the day, I built something that I wanted to build because it was inspired by so many little pieces of my history. It's just a really good feeling when you get behind the wheel of something that you've kind of pushed the limits on, and that you're just driving to enjoy. Know that it's only the tip of the iceberg of, you know, where we're going to continue to evolve this 356 model, and how I can take what I've learned in this particular car and infuse some of that into future cars that we build.